Hi guys, Will Terry here, and I'm in my car, obviously, and this video is going to be called something like, I haven't really thought this through. Should I work with small publishers? Let's call it that. And this video was inspired by one of my former UVU students by the name of Ben, who sent me an email, and I can't read it right now because I'm on my phone videotaping, but the essence of it was he is compiling a list of publishers to work with, and as he started whittling down his list and kind of like weeding through them, it sounded like, you know, trying to find out if they publish the kind of books or need the kind of art that he produces. Basically his list is getting kind of smaller, and so he's thinking, well, should I add small publishers back in? Is it worth it to work with the small publishers, basically? And so that's the question that I'm going to attempt to answer right now. And you know, there are advantages and disadvantages with working with large and medium and small publishers. Some of the small, I mean, the advantages obviously of working with a large one is they're going to have bigger budgets. They're going to be typically more professional. They're going to, you know, sometimes have budgets to actually send you on book tours, and sometimes they will, I've had my rooms paid for by publishers a few times with going to do signings and stuff, and school visits and things like that. One time I got to go out to San Francisco on the publisher's dime to promote our book, and I've been at various conferences where they put me up in a hotel and give me a meal allowance and things like that. That typically isn't going to happen with smaller publishers. You know, and even with medium-sized publishers, it's kind of iffy if you're going to be able to get that kind of stuff. But even with the large ones, if your book isn't doing well, or if it's a brand new book, if it's an unproven book, you're also not going to get that sort of attention. And you know, basically, I guess this is kind of a pros and cons thing. But the short answer to this question is basically yes. I totally think it's worth it to put some small publishers on your list and some medium-sized publishers. There are always going to be publishers that are kind of up and coming, and then there are going to be kind of the established smaller ones that are mismanaged, that are kind of on the way out, and you're not going to know at what point in their life cycle they're in. And I don't think it hurts to promote to all different sizes. I mean, obviously, if you're sending out postcards, it's going to cost you money to send to them. So, you know, you're probably thinking, I want to be really judicious with my money. I don't want to waste it. But in advertising your services, anybody that's advertising anything, there's always going to be a certain amount of waste involved in order to get the word out. You know, I remember when I was sending postcards out back in the day, if I had a 1% success rate, I considered that an amazing postcard mailing. In other words, if I sent out 100 postcards and I get a job from one of them, that was an amazing ratio. And at one point, I was sending out as many as right around 4,000 postcards. So, you know, if I got 40 jobs, that would be a completely amazing return. And I usually never hit 1%. I was usually below that. And so, I'm reading. I might be reading the wrong thing into the question, but I think that could be part of the reason for, you know, whether to put the smaller publishers on there or not. Is you're probably thinking, well, I don't want to waste a postcard and postage and my time and effort if, you know, they're not even, if they don't even publish the kind of thing that I do. You know, if there's no chance of me ever working for them, I certainly don't want to send them a postcard. And that's the, you know, natural way to think, and that's a good way to think. But you're not always going to know. There are times where, you know, there might be a publisher and you look at their backlist and you look at your work and you go, I don't see myself fitting in here. Meanwhile, they just got a new art director. They just accepted a manuscript that's perfect for your style, and all of a sudden they're going to publish a book looking for someone like you. And if you're not in the running, you're not going to get the job. Someone else that has an art style like yours is going to get that book project. And so there's no way to ever know, because I know people that really try to focus their mailing list and really try to target it, and there are people that are in that camp of really targeting it down and never sending a postcard to someone who couldn't possibly use it. And then there, on the other side of the scale, there are people who are just going to typically shotgun more postcards out, and that I tended to fall more into that camp. I didn't want to waste money, but I wasn't afraid of. I knew it took money to make money, and I knew that it took getting the postcards out there. And I back in the day, I got a lot of work from art directors who said, you've been sending the postcards to my friend who works over at this other publisher or other magazine or other design firm or something, and they couldn't use your work, but then they thought it'd be perfect for me, and they gave it to me, and I love it, and I'm here to give you a job. And that happened a lot of times. So I like to think of my mailings as like little seeds that are kind of going out into the world, and hopefully some of them find a purchase in the ground and are able to sprout forth. Another reason to work with small publishers is they can move faster. They don't have as much of red tape with the approval processes. Typically the budgets are smaller, but if you're starting out, the smaller publishers aren't going to be trying to get the top high-end illustrators typically, because they don't have the budgets to attract them. So it's kind of a natural proving grounds, if you will, for beginning illustrators. And so where it's going to be harder for the beginning illustrator to get work with a bigger publisher, it's going to be easier to get work with a smaller publisher. And the reason why you want to get work is so that you can make some money, start having projects that you can then use to attract larger publishers. Like if you knock it out of the park with a smaller publisher and that book does really well, then it's going to get attention, it's going to be seen, and if other art directors look at it and go, wow, who's the illustrator on this book, and it kind of just follows a natural course. I can give you an example of somebody who worked with a tiny publisher where it really paid off, and that was Zach Retz. He's someone that we have who's taught a class for us at sbslearn.com. Just had to sneak it in there. He's an illustrator / entertainment illustrator. He works out in LA. I can't remember what company he's working for now. But if you Google his name, Zach Retz, and it's ZACRETZ, and his work is amazing. He did a book called Too Much Glue for, I believe the press is Flashlight Press, and I was looking at their website the other day, and I noticed that it's extremely easy to find their contact information. In fact, they have submission guidelines right on their website where you can just email them images, and they're probably going to see a little spike in their submissions because I'm putting this out there, and they're probably going to wonder where it's coming from. But yeah, Flashlight Press, you go to their submissions page on their website, and it gives you different information if you're agented, or if you're just an artist and you want to illustrate other people's books. They have a place where you can send them images, that's something that is harder to deal with the larger publishers, because with the larger publishers, they typically make it much tougher to submit to them. They just don't need us as much as we need them, and they already are working with so many really talented illustrators that they typically don't go looking, and so you kind of, and I think most of those larger ones really want your work coming in from an agent anyway, and so they just don't want to get bogged down with looking at a ton of submissions. I don't know if Flashlight is getting inundated with submissions because they've got it on their website, and so it's possible that you could submit and no one's looking at it. I have no idea, but because they are smaller, I would assume that they're like, when you imagine, like, if you started out a publishing company, right, when nobody knows who you are, well, you're going to be hungry for submissions, right? So I just, in their life cycle as a publisher, I just don't know where they are. I don't know if they're growing as a company, but I do know that Too Much Glue was at very high on the Amazon list of ranked books. That book did extremely well, and it surprised a lot of people in the publishing world because it came out of nowhere. It came from this really tiny press, and that happens quite frequently. Another thing that will happen though with smaller presses is some of them, you look at their backlist and they don't have a good designer. This guy just pulled out in front of me. Maybe he thought he wanted to get on the video. But you look at their books and you wonder, like, I mean, they're graphically they're ugly. You can often really tell a difference between big publisher books and small publisher books, and their budgets are just going to be smaller. They're not going to be able to hire in-house full-time graphic designers that went to good art schools that have really good portfolios. I mean, it's a supply and demand issue, and they're just, you can just tell often. I've had that problem before working with some smaller publishers where the books that we worked on, I tried to give them some guidelines or some suggestions on graphic design, and the answer I got was, well, that's not your job, that's the graphic designer's job. And in my mind, I was like, yeah, but I have to live with this book for the rest of my life, and your graphic designer is going to screw it up. And they did. And it's unfortunate, but when working with larger presses, I've had much better luck with my books looking better, and so there's going to be a lot of realities. I think the main thing that I can tell you is, there's going to be a curve to your career. You're going to start lower, and you're going to hopefully work your way up higher and higher and higher as you go. And everybody wants to start out really high, and everybody wants to start out making the top dollar, and the reality is that just doesn't usually happen. And so I would get comfortable working with the idea that you're going to be working with publishers that are not going to be able to offer you everything that you want, but that you're just basically using them as stepping stones to get to something better. So in the end, I would definitely always include, the smaller publishers, but I would be judicious. I wouldn't just put every single one on my list. I would kind of look and ask myself, do I want to work with this company? Are they doing anything remotely close to what I might be wanting to do? Even though I said, your seeds can go out there, and they might find their place, they might find a home somewhere unexpected. You do have a budget at the end of the day. You can't submit to every publisher out there, and so you're going to have to be a little bit judicious. Now, as far as finding them, we have in our children's book class at SVS, I did a whole section on how to find publishers, how to get your list created and everything, and it's in our children's book class. It's in the How to Illustrate Children's Book, the business partition. So there's two parts to that class. There's the regular children's book class, and then there's the business side. So everything is in there. It would take me way too long to describe it here, but I will say this: every single publisher is online. If you are someone who can move without the ball, as Charles Barkley once said, and I like to quote that quote all the time because it means a lot to me. It means you have to hustle without any guarantee that you're going to see a direct payoff from your hustle. That is one of the hardest things to do in basketball. That is one of the hardest things to do in life. That's one of the hardest things to do in business. And those that do it typically end up becoming more successful. I mean, that's what makes a successful salesman or saleswoman. What it means is that you have to emotionally prepare yourself to treat every potential customer or every person as a potential customer, whether they look promising or not. And the same with waiting tables. You never know. I did that for a little while. You never know. You try to judge a book by the cover, and your temptation is, well, I think this person's going to be a bad tipper, therefore I'm not going to give them my best attention. And then sometimes you're wrong, and sometimes they were the one who would have given you, the 25% tip or something like that. So you've got to be able to do your own research, find the companies that publish these books. Again, we have that information at svslearn.com in our children's book class. Everything is online. You can find it there. You can generate the right kind of mailing list. If your work is at the level where you can attract art buyers, if you're in the right place at the right time, you'll get the job over someone else. There are people who are more qualified than you, who have better portfolios than you, and art directors don't know who they are because they're not sending their stuff to that particular company. And so you will be able to beat those people because you showed up that day, because your artwork was there and theirs wasn't. So I hope this helps, and I've arrived here at my appointment, so I'm going to cut this off now. But thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next video.